Who was Goliath really? Was he a mythical giant, a legendary warrior exaggerated over time, or an actual man of unusual size who once struck fear into ancient Israel? For centuries, the story of David and Goliath has fascinated readers of the Bible and historians alike. A young shepherd armed with nothing but a sling and stones defeats the most feared warrior of the Philistines. This tale is so iconic that David versus Goliath has become a universal metaphor for the underdog triumphing against impossible odds. But beneath the layers of faith and storytelling lies a deeper question. What if Goliath was more than just a story? Could archaeology, ancient texts, and modern scholarship reveal the truth about him? Was he truly a towering giant nearly 3 meters tall? Did he belong to a race of warriors lost to history? Or was his legend simply magnified by time, retellings, and the power of symbolism? Today we'll dive deep into this mystery, uncovering the evidence from archaeology, exploring ancient inscriptions, examining biblical manuscripts, and even looking into modern science to find out who was the real Goliath. The most detailed account of Goliath comes from the book of 1 Samuel 17. Here he is described as a Philistine champion from the city of Gath. He stood at an astonishing height, 6 cubits and a span, which in today's terms equals about 9 feet 9 inches. He wore bronze armor that weighed more than many modern soldiers could carry, and he carried a massive spear with an iron tip alone weighing around 15 pounds. Every morning and evening for 40 days, Goliath stood before the armies of Israel, mocking them and challenging anyone brave enough to fight him in single combat. No one dared, until a young shepherd named David stepped forward with only his sling. This biblical description paints Goliath as a terrifying figure, not just because of his size, but because of the psychological warfare he waged. He wasn't simply a soldier, he was a symbol of Philistine might, arrogance, and intimidation. But here's where things get interesting. Not all ancient manuscripts agree on his height. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint, Greek Old Testament, record his height as 4 cubits and a span around 6 feet 9 inches. Still tall, but not impossibly so. This difference raises questions. Was Goliath truly a giant, or did later traditions exaggerate his stature? To understand Goliath, we must understand the world he came from. The Philistines were one of Israel's greatest enemies during the time of the judges and early monarchy. They were not native Canaanites, but part of the mysterious sea peoples who migrated from regions around the Aegean Sea around the 12th century BCE. They established 5 major city-states: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. Archaeology at Tel Es-Safi, ancient Gath, has revealed a highly advanced and fortified city. Excavations uncovered massive walls, temples, weapons, and even pottery inscribed with names remarkably similar to Goliath, suggesting that this wasn't just a myth, but a cultural memory tied to a real people and their champions. The Philistines were skilled warriors and iron workers. Their military strength often outclassed Israel's armies, who relied on bronze weapons at the time. For Israel, Goliath represented not just a man, but the overwhelming technological and cultural power of the Philistines. The Bible mentions giants in several places. The Nephilim in Genesis 6:4, the Anakim in Numbers 13:33, and the Rephaim in Deuteronomy are described as tall, fearsome people inhabiting the land before Israel's conquest. Some scholars connect Goliath to these groups, suggesting that he may have been one of the last survivors of a race of unusually tall warriors. Indeed, the Bible records that Goliath had brothers or kin who were also of great size. In 2 Samuel 21 and 1 Chronicles 20, it describes battles against other giants from Gath, one of whom had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. This genetic detail has fueled speculation that Goliath's family carried hereditary traits that made them appear giant-like to the Israelites. In 2005, archaeologists at Tel Es-Safi discovered a piece of pottery inscribed with 2 names, Al-Wati and Walt. Scholars noted their striking similarity to the name Goliath, While it doesn't prove that Goliath himself existed, it confirms that such names were in use in Philistine culture around the 10th–9th century BCE, the very period traditionally associated with the biblical David. Excavations also revealed a city of immense size and power, consistent with the biblical picture of Gath as a dominant Philistine stronghold. This strengthens the argument that Goliath, whether giant or not, was rooted in real history, not just legend. Perhaps the most dramatic moment in the story is the actual duel. David, refusing Saul's armor, faced Goliath with nothing but faith, courage, and a sling. To ancient readers, a sling might sound like a child's toy, but in reality, it was a deadly weapon. Skilled slingers could hurl stones at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, accurate enough to kill at distance. When David released his stone, it struck Goliath's forehead, and the mighty warrior fell. David then cut off his head with Goliath's own sword, a decisive and symbolic victory. Modern scholars suggest that this story may have been preserved not just because of its drama, but because it symbolized something greater: the triumph of faith over fear, of weakness over strength, and of God's power over human arrogance. So, was Goliath a towering monster or simply a tall warrior? Here are the main theories. Literal giant. Some take the Bible's larger measurement literally, believing Goliath stood nearly 10 feet tall, perhaps due to supernatural lineage or unique genetics. Very tall man. Based on the Dead Sea Scrolls and Septuagint, Goliath may have been closer to 6'9", 7'0". Still tall for his time, but within human possibility. Symbolic exaggeration. Ancient writers often magnified the stature of heroes and enemies. Goliath's height may have been symbolic of his power, rather than a biological fact. Medical explanation. Some suggest Goliath may have had gigantism or acromegaly, conditions that cause excessive growth. This could explain his unusual size and possibly even his poor vision-making. David's precision strike all the more lethal. Regardless of the details, Goliath has become more than a historical figure. His name represents overwhelming obstacles, while David represents faith, courage, and the power of the underdog. The story transcends religion, inspiring countless retellings in literature, art, sports, politics, and popular culture. Even today, the phrase David versus Goliath describes any struggle where the weak face the mighty. That timeless appeal proves the enduring power of the story. So, who was Goliath? Perhaps he was a real Philistine warrior of exceptional size. Perhaps his story was magnified over generations until he became a giant in memory, if not in flesh. Or perhaps his significance lies not in his height, but in what he represented. The impossible challenge that was overcome by faith and courage. The ruins of Gath, the ancient texts, and the echoes of history all point us to one truth. Behind the legend of Goliath was a man, a warrior, and a moment in time that shaped the faith of a nation. And maybe that's the real lesson. It's not the size of the enemy that matters, but the size of the faith facing him.